I'm following your video on what I can remove and what needs to be plugged. It's sometimes kind of hard to do because a lot of hose splits off and goes other things places. So what can you remove from your bike if you want to add velocity stacks, increase the performance? Simple way to put this, you can pretty much get rid of everything that's not coolant or fuel. If it's coolant or fuel, you need it. It's important. There's a lot of air injection system stuff for pair valves, and it's mostly EPA stuff that Honda has to put on the bike to be able to actually sell the bike to you. Otherwise, they couldn't sell it in the States. They probably could sell it in some other foreign countries, but thanks to the EPA, can't sell them here. You can take pretty much everything out as long as it's not fuel or gas. So on single carb bikes, the Honda Shadows at least, many of them have coolant lines going to the carburetor. And this is a carb warming system. It doesn't go into the carb. There's no passages through the carb or anything like that. It literally comes out of the water jacket at the intake manifold and goes into a dead end in the carb. There's like a little Y junction thing, and it goes back out into the radiator. The logic behind this is to warm the carb. If you live in a really cold environment, apparently this is a really good idea. A long time ago, they had issues with carbs freezing, because if a carb is attached to a bike with metal, anytime you rip fuel and air apart into an atomized mixture, you drop temperature. You don't increase temperature. So carbs would get so cold they would ice over. The faster you go and the faster that air is flowing through there, you're getting colder and colder and colder inside the venturi, and the carb gets cold, and then it starts to not function properly. So the idea there is to keep the carb warm enough to prevent that. In theory, yes, it's great. Have I ever seen this in real life? Nope. Never seen it. Heard about it from people who race hot rods or who have really old Harleys with hinky-ass old carbs. Yeah, that's probably going to happen on older technology, but nowadays it's not so much of a concern. If you live in a pretty temperate climate, you really don't need it. The best way to get rid of that is you can take the line from the intake manifold on a single carb bike. There's going to be a brass nipple sticking up. You can run the line from that to the nipple on the radiator. That's one way to do it. You can also plug both of those nipples. You can take a piece of tubing, the tubing that was originally attached to them, and hose clamp it on, and find a bolt that fits inside that hose. So it's got a screw in though. I would recommend putting a little bit of like black RTV on the threads, which also never use any RTV anywhere else on the bike ever, ever, ever. And JB Weld should never be used anywhere near a motorcycle either. If you find yourself reaching for those, stop. Go get help. Yeah, so you can get a bolt with a little RTV, screw it into the hose, and hose clamp that. So you have two hose clamps on the hose coming off the nipples. That will plug those ports on the radiator as well as the intake manifold. They are under pressure, so you can't just smush a vacuum plug on there. If you do, that's just going to pop right off and you'll have coolant everywhere. So that's basically all that you have to do to get rid of the coolant lines. If you're trying to get rid of all the stuff for all the air lines and vacuum crap and valves that are underneath your bike, it can be pretty confusing if you've never touched anything like that before. But you can basically rip all of it out. If there's coolant or fuel in it, it needs to stay. One other exception I just remembered. The auto fuel petcock, which was on the Honda Shadow VT600, VLX600, aka same thing, from 99 to 07. They recalled this because it was a vacuum-operated diaphragm that shut off the fuel flow when you turned the bike off. So if you shut your bike off and you have no more compression on your rear cylinder, the idea was that the vacuum wouldn't hold the diaphragm open to allow fuel to pass through into your carburetor. Kind of a good idea, I guess. you know, if the bike dies and goes down, it's probably not going to leak gas anywhere. But honestly, I've seen enough bikes go down that it's not that big of an issue. Again, this is a government mandated bunch of crap. So the easiest way to get rid of that is just to take the AFP auto fuel petcock off the intake and run the fuel line from the tank to the carburetor. I do recommend putting a fuel filter in that line somewhere. You don't always have to get a fuel filter from me, but a fuel filter, very important. Save you lots of heartache down the road. You're going to be left with a small, like quarter inch vacuum hose going down to the rear cylinder, and that needs to be plugged. So I do offer an auto fuel petcock plug, vacuum port plug, on my web store, shoptjbc.com, and it's the proper depth, the proper size, and it will plug that properly so your bike will still run. If you don't plug that, you will have serious issues, very big issues. Again, if you guys have any questions, I would love to hear them. Send them to me through direct message if you want, on Facebook or Instagram, either or, and I will do my very best to answer everybody's questions. At this point in time, there are so many emails, and I just can't handle everything. So I'm one guy, and I'm trying to do my best to help everybody out, and I really do want to help everybody, but if that's what I was doing, answering emails, I would be doing nothing else, and nothing would get out the door. So thank you guys for all the support and for all the help. Shoot me your questions through the Instagram direct message, or if you email them to us, I will also be answering them on here, any email questions I get. So I hope everybody has a really freaking good week, even though it's going to piss rain here for the next 5 days, and ride safe and do fun shit.